They arrested him, planted drugs, and laughed, unaware that by tomorrow he'd be sitting in court, but not on the defendant's bench. When District Attorney Michael King walked into the courtroom, their faces turned pale. What happened next would shock even the most seasoned professionals. But let's go back to the beginning. Michael King walked down the sidewalk, phone in hand. He had just finished a meeting with colleagues and was heading to his car, parked a block away. He wore an expensive suit, and his Rolex glinted under the streetlights. From a patrol car parked at the corner, 2 officers, David Ransom and Tom Harper, watched him. "Look at this, Harper," Ransom smirked. "A guy in a fancy suit, but definitely out of place. Should we check him out?" Harper grinned, already stepping out of the car. "Hey, buddy," Ransom called out, approaching. "Show us some ID." Michael stopped, frowning. "What's the problem, officer?" "You match the description of a suspect," Harper said, lazily, tapping the radio on his shoulder. "Dark suit, about 6 feet tall. We're investigating drug trafficking in this area." Michael sighed, pulling out his ID. "Michael King," he said calmly, handing over the document. Ransom took it but didn't even glance at it. At that moment, Harper stepped closer, then, with a sudden move, grabbed Michael's arm and twisted it behind his back. "What the hell?" Michael jerked, but he felt cold steel cuffs snap onto his wrists. "You're acting suspicious," Harper smirked. Ransom turned to the growing crowd of onlookers, some already pulling out their phones. "Move along, nothing to see here," he muttered, shoving Michael toward the car. "You're making a mistake," Michael said coldly. But the officers just laughed as they pushed him into the patrol car. "A mistake? Oh, buddy, you have no idea how things work around here," Harper sneered, sliding behind the wheel. As the patrol car sped toward the station, Michael remained silent. His heartbeat was steady. They had no idea who they had just put in handcuffs. At the station, Michael was led into the interrogation room, forced into a hard metal chair, and cuffed to the table. Ransom and Harper stood across from him, smirking with self-satisfaction. "Well, well, buddy," Ransom began, tossing a plastic bag filled with white powder onto the table. "Care to explain what this is?" Michael didn't even glance at the bag. "Seriously? This is so cliché." Harper chuckled. "Hear that, Ransom? Looks like we've got ourselves a smart guy. You trying to say we planted this, huh, pal?" "I'm not trying to say it. I'm stating it," Michael replied calmly. Ransom leaned in closer, his voice turning icy. "This isn't a courtroom, genius. You either sign the confession or you're looking at serious time." Michael locked eyes with him. "And then what? You fabricate a case? Waste the DA's time with this nonsense?" Harper smirked. "DA's office, huh? Oh, buddy, you think you've got connections? Here, in this station, you're nobody." He pulled out a confession form and a pen, then leaned in, staring Michael down. "Sign it, or we find evidence of a weapon and resisting arrest. With those charges, you're done." Michael slowly took the pen, twirled it between his fingers, then set it down. "I refuse. You little—" Harper raised his hand, but just then the door burst open. Standing in the doorway was the precinct captain, with the assistant district attorney right behind him. "What the hell is going on here?" the captain barked, scanning the room. "Why is District Attorney Michael King in handcuffs?" The smug confidence drained from Ransom and Harper's faces in an instant. Ransom and Harper froze, staring at the captain as if they had seen a ghost. District Attorney?" Harper stammered, his lips suddenly dry. The captain's icy glare didn't waver. "Take off his handcuffs, immediately." Ransom's hands trembled as he fumbled to unlock the cuffs. Michael stood up, rubbing his wrists, and shot the officers a cold look. So, gentlemen, remind me, who's the nobody here? Harper went pale, while Ransom tried to stammer out an excuse. Captain, this is just a misunderstanding. Shut up! The captain snapped. The door swung open again, and two agents from Internal Affairs stepped in. Michael? One of them nodded at King. We got your message. There's enough evidence to suspend them immediately. Wait! Harper jumped to his feet in panic. This was just a mistake. We didn't know who he was. Michael chuckled. Didn't know? And if I were just some ordinary guy with no connections, you would have thrown me in a cell and called it a day, right? The officers said nothing. I think we're done here, one of the agents said. Officers Ransom and Harper, you are under arrest for evidence tampering, abuse of power, and false imprisonment. Ransom opened his mouth to protest, but Harper stopped him. They both knew there was no way out. Michael straightened his suit and looked at them one last time. You thought the law was on your side? Today, it's against you. As the disgraced officers were led out in handcuffs, they were met by a swarm of journalists waiting at the entrance. Camera flashes exploded, and Michael stepped forward to the microphones. Today, we witnessed how abuse of power can destroy innocent lives. But justice has been restored, and this is only the beginning. The camera flashes illuminated his face. He knew this was a day no one would forget. The next morning, the city woke up in shock. News headlines dominated every channel. Corrupt officers framed the district attorney. Now they're under investigation. Police scandal. Who else is involved? Michael King exposes the system. Will there be reform? On social media, videos of Michael's arrest, his release, and the handcuffing of Harper and Ransom spread like wildfire. Comment sections exploded with debates and discussions, but at the center of it all remained one name: Michael King. That morning, he sat in his office, watching the news broadcast. The camera showed Harper and Ransom being led down the courthouse hallway in handcuffs. Their faces were pale with fear, their shoulders slumped in defeat. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Calls from journalists, colleagues, and community activists. The office door opened, and Lauren Carter, his deputy, walked in. The judge didn't waste any time, she said, tossing a printed decision onto his desk. They're being held without bail. They're facing up to 10 years. Michael picked up the document and scanned the lines. It was expected. They thought they could do whatever they wanted, he said quietly, that the system would always protect them. Lauren sat across from him, folding her hands. They're not the only ones. If they've been operating like this for so long, someone was covering for them. Michael placed the paper down and met her gaze. Exactly. We're opening an investigation. Lauren nodded. I've already compiled a list of officers with questionable records, but you realize this makes you a target? Michael smirked. First time? He picked up his phone and opened social media. His inbox was flooded with messages. Thank you for what you're doing. Finally, someone is exposing these criminals. You betrayed the police. People like you make our city unsafe. Hope this is just the beginning. How many more Harpers are still out there? Watch your back. You've made too many enemies. Michael exhaled. He knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. A knock at the door. This time, Captain John Miller walked in, a tall, grizzled man with 30 years of service behind him. King, he began, shutting the door behind him. Do you realize what you've done? Michael tilted his head. Done or exposed? The captain clenched his fists. We could lose the public's trust in the police. People will take to the streets, demanding mass firings. Michael leaned back in his chair. That's exactly what should happen if the system is rotten. He locked eyes with the captain. I'm not fighting the police. I'm fighting those who turned it into their personal weapon." Miller was silent. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Then you have my support. But be careful. Someone will try to silence you. I already figured that out." Michael stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and grabbed a folder filled with case files. Today was a new day, and he wasn't stopping now.